Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive, truly fundamental paradigm shift in modern medicine. We are going to explore a hypothesis that might completely change how you view the microscopic world, and specifically, the very cells inside your own body. For the longest time, we thought we had the basic script for how cancer starts completely figured out. But what if we've been pointing the finger at the wrong culprit this whole time?
I want you to really ponder this for a second. Where does cancer actually begin? If you blow the dust off almost any biology textbook from the last few decades, you're going to get a very specific, very confident answer. You'll read all about random genetic mutations, environmental damage, and this cascading failure of the cell's central command center. But emerging research is challenging that textbook answer in a way that sounds, honestly, a lot like science fiction.
You see, for decades, the entire field of oncology has operated on what we call a nuclear-centric view. We've strongly believed that tumors start right in the heart of the cell, the nucleus. The standard story goes a little something like this. Your nuclear DNA takes on damage, crucial genes with names like RAS, MYAC, and the famous tumor suppressor TP53 get mutated, and boom, this broken DNA initiates cancer. Case closed, right? Well, maybe not. We've spent billions of dollars and countless decades of research exclusively targeting these nuclear mutations.
But here's the massive plot twist. What if the broken nuclear DNA isn't the arsonist that started the fire, but literally just the wreckage left behind? Emerging research suggests that mitochondrial dysfunction might actually be the true fundamental driver of oncogenesis. That's right, our mitochondria. Those tiny little structures we all memorized in high school biology as the powerhouses of the cell, they might be the actual culprits initiating cancer. And to understand why, we really have to look back at where they came from in the first place.
Chapter 1. An Ancient Evolutionary Truce.
To really grasp the gravity of this medical mystery, we've got to rewind the clock, way, way back. We need to look at the inciting incident that created the very cells you and I are made of. About 1.5 billion years ago, an ancient single-celled organism did something completely extraordinary. It engulfed a smaller, free-living bacteria. But instead of digesting it like a normal meal, they actually formed a partnership. It was the ultimate microscopic roommate agreement. The host provided a safe home, and the bacteria generated massive amounts of energy. Over eons, those engulfed bacteria evolved into the mitochondria that power every single human cell today. But here is the absolutely crucial detail. They never fully gave up their independence. They actually kept their own separate circular DNA.
Which brings us to what is essentially a microscopic Cold War happening inside your cells right now. On one side, you have your host nuclear DNA. It's highly protected, it repairs itself really well, and it generally cares about the survival of your whole body. But then you have mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA. It's semi-autonomous. It has a much higher mutation rate, very limited repair mechanisms, and functionally, it can be incredibly selfish. It basically just wants to replicate itself. So for 1.5 billion years, there's been this latent evolutionary tension, a fragile truce between your main DNA and this ancient bacterial DNA.
Chapter 2. When power plants go rogue.
So what exactly happens when this 1.5 billion-year-old truce breaks down? Think about what happens when your cells are exposed to chronic stress, toxins, or just normal aging, and those fragile mitochondria power plants start taking on damage. When mitochondria mutate and break down, they can't produce energy normally using oxygen anymore. So to survive, they literally hijack the cell's entire metabolism. They've forced the cell to rely on a much less efficient but much faster process called aerobic glycolysis. That's fermenting sugar for energy even when oxygen is perfectly available. This metabolic shift is famously known as the Warburg effect. Now, for a long time, we just assumed this shift was a weird side effect of cancer. But the mitochondria first hypothesis argues that this hijacking is actually a primary survival strategy of rogue mitochondria. It's the very thing that kickstarts tumor growth.
Now, normally, your cells have a pretty great defense mechanism for this called mitophagy. Think of it as a cellular quality control system that tags and destroys damaged mitochondria. But cancer cells, they have a genius workaround. Researchers have found that tumors often have heavily elevated levels of a specific protein called USP30. This protein acts exactly like an eraser, just wiping away the destruction tags on the bad mitochondria. So the cancer cell is actively protecting its rogue power plants from being cleaned up by your body.
And get this, these rogue mitochondria don't just sit there quietly. They actively communicate. They use a process called retrograde signaling. When they get stressed out, they send chemical SOS signals. things like reactive oxygen species and calcium bursts, backward into the cell's main nucleus. And these signals actually reprogram the host's nuclear DNA. They forcefully turn on survival and proliferation pathways. So the mitochondria are essentially hacking the main command center, telling it, hey, don't let this cell die, multiply instead.
Chapter 3. Sabotaging the immune system.
As if hacking the host cell wasn't wild enough, what happens when your body's immune system detects the tumor and sends T cells in to attack it? Well, the rogue mitochondria have a defense for that too. We are talking about literal microscopic warfare here. Tumors will actually construct these physical bridges, called tunneling nanotubes, and connect themselves directly to your attacking immune cells. And then, they physically dump their own defective, garbage mitochondria straight into the T cells. This parasitic transfer completely wrecks the immune cell's internal engine, causing massive metabolic exhaustion. The T cells literally run out of energy and just stop fighting. The cancer is using its broken mitochondria as a biological weapon to shut down your body's natural defenses.
Chapter 4. A new cancer paradigm.
Let's stack this all up and see the ultimate showdown between our old assumptions and this groundbreaking new hypothesis. It is a complete shift in our understanding. Under the old nuclear-centric model, nuclear mutations are the primary driver. But in the mitochondria-first hypothesis, it's the highly mutable mitochondrial DNA that initiates the chaos. And instead of immune escape being just about hiding from the body, we now see it as an active, aggressive suppression via mitochondrial transfer. This completely flips the script. Cancer isn't just some random genetic glitch. It's a metabolic and evolutionary rebellion driven by these ancient little organelles.
And this new paradigm offers a totally fascinating explanation for metastasis, how cancer actually spreads through the body. It's called the fusion hybrid model. The idea is that tumor cells might actually fuse with your immune cells, specifically myeloid cells, which already inherently know how to travel throughout your bloodstream. It's the impaired mitochondrial respiration in these new hybrid cells that actively pushes them to migrate and spread the cancer systemically. The mitochondria are, quite literally, driving the getaway car.
Chapter 5. The Future of Treatment. So, here is the million-dollar question. If mitochondria are the true root cause, how does this completely alter the future of saving lives? What happens if we stop solely targeting the nucleus and finally start targeting the power plants? Well, the future looks incredibly promising on the high-tech front. Scientists are developing highly targeted antioxidants like Mito2 that go straight into the mitochondria to neutralize stress. We're also looking at USP30 inhibitors, drugs specifically designed to turn that cellular cleanup process, mitophagy, back on, so the body can finally destroy the rogue power plants. There are even preclinical trials looking at using stem cells to transfer healthy mitochondria into sick cells, and CRISPR-like tools to literally edit and repair the mitochondrial DNA directly. It's amazing stuff.
But it's not all just billion-dollar gene therapies. There are some highly accessible strategies being studied right now too. Because rogue mitochondria force cancer to rely almost entirely on glucose. Remember that Warburg effect we talked about? Interventions like fasting and strict glucose restriction can quite literally starve the tumor. Other methods include alkalizing the tumor microenvironment to hinder its growth, using red light therapy to stimulate healthy respiration, and even employing compounds like methylene blue to bypass those damaged mitochondrial pathways and restore oxidative balance in the cell.
Which leaves us with this final thought. When you look in the mirror, you see one unified organism looking back. But the reality is, you are a walking, breathing, symbiotic partnership. Trillions of your cells are hosting ancient, semi-autonomous power plants that have their own DNA, their own agenda, and an evolutionary history dating back 1.5 billion years. If this hypothesis holds true, cancer is the tragic consequence of what happens when that ancient truce finally breaks down. So, are you just a host in a 1.5 billion-year-old cellular conflict? It's a fascinating question, and one that just might hold the key to finally defeating this complex disease. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning what you know.